All right, I'm here with Leslie Manookian. She is the president and founder of the Health Freedom Defense Fund, which is a nonprofit. They're on a mission to rectify the health injustices of the world through education, advocacy, legal challenges for these unjust mandates, laws, policies, and she's also got an amazing background because she was a former Wall Street business exec. She also has an award-winning documentary film. She's a producer, she's a writer, and a homeopath. Leslie, I don't know what you don't do. Welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you on.
You're so sweet. Thanks so much. It's great to be with you. I'm so happy to be here today.
Leslie, this is an amazing day. It's October 12th. I'm not exactly sure when we're going to air this episode, but I'm going to do it for sure soon. October 12th, 2022. And I'm just smiling because last night, you know, the CEO, right, I believe of Pfizer, just came out in a court in a court documents, and he said, "Well, I never said that. I never said anything about this thing being safe and effective and preventing transmission." Wow, what a great! I am just fired up. I don't know about you, but I'm fired up to just be alive in this moment and kind of see the tides turning, I guess.
I hope the tide is turning. So I think if we're talking about the same thing, it was a Pfizer representative was testifying at the European Union. I don't think it was Albert Bourla himself, the CEO of Pfizer.
Okay.
But what this person said when challenged, when questioned by a member of the European Parliament, I think is what it was, she responded that we never studied the shots for infection or transmission.
Yeah.
And or rather, we never studied the shots for transmission, and so we don't know. And of course, that's just blown up the internet.
Yeah, not a really great answer.
No, it's an exciting time to be alive, but it's also, I think, it's pretty hard in some ways too.
100%, and we'll get into that. Yeah, it is. It's been a challenging last couple of years. Anybody knows my story. I was forced to leave a job of 15 years because of this very thing and the misinformation, I guess you could call it, and some of the things that happened. But before we kind of get into that, I love to talk to guests, and I love to just kind of ask like how you got here because, again, you were a Wall Street exec. Like, how do you go from Wall Street exec to full-blown health freedom activist?
So I am vaccine injured. I didn't know it at the time, but I graduated from business school. And before I went to Wall Street, I started at Goldman Sachs. I went to Southeast Asia with a bunch of girlfriends. We were all graduating from business school together. And one of my friends said, "Don't forget to go and get your shots." And I was like, "Oh gosh, I would have never thought about that." So I went over to the medical center at the university and got all the injections they would give me. I had no idea that there was any downside. And my health within a very short period of time started to deteriorate, and it just continued deteriorating over the weeks, months, and years. And like I said, I didn't put two and two together, but what I did have happen to me, I didn't put two and two together for a long time. It wasn't until I was making the documentary, The Greater Good, on vaccines that I started to really understand what had happened to me. And I had been going to the doctor for years when I lived in London, and he kept telling me, "I know you're sick, but I can't help you. And this kind of medicine can't help you. And I think you should see a homeopath or an acupuncturist." And I was like, okay. So I went and did it. But before that, when I was working on Wall Street, I had a series of very interesting experiences. And I'll just tell you about one of them because it's one of the most jaw-dropping experiences of my life. And it really informed who I wanted to be and then became. And because what I understood was that this business that I was in, that I thought was actually doing some good in the world by providing capital to different groups and things like this. And there is some good that happens from it. There's also a very cavalier attitude towards the trade-off between profits and human life. And basically what happened, Joel, was that the CEO of one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world came into our offices. I used to interview these CEOs essentially for my job and decide which of these companies we would buy in our portfolios. I was responsible for Europe, our European stocks. And so I'm in my office in London. The CEO of one of this big, huge pharmaceutical companies comes in with the head of R&D, head of the chief financial officer, and the head of investor relations. And they're there because they want to reassure us that their stock that we own, which has gone down about 25 or 30%, is going to be okay. And the reason it's gone down so much is because their new blockbuster drug is in the phase 3 trials, which is the phase 3 is the phase that all drugs go through before they get released on the market, before they get FDA license. Okay. And so out of the phase 3 trials, there are rumors leaking out that some people have died. And so the CEO comes in and he says, listen, yes, a few people have died on these trials. The bad news is the FDA is going to make us put a black box warning on the packaging. The good news is we still think we can do $7 billion in peak sales. All in one breath. And I was like,
perfect.
Anyway, it was just such a eye-opening experience for me, and so disturbing that it prompted me to start reflecting on what I was doing. And a couple of years later, I got pregnant and I left so that I could commit my life to doing something more important and more positive for humanity, because I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And that was not an isolated incident. I heard other things that shocked me.
It's funny. I look at my own work and as a coach and just working with others and even myself, and, just, it's so funny to hear you say, like, you took all these, I'm going to use a different word because I the censorship's real. You took a various numbers of juices and put them in your body. And even though you were like, had some issues, you didn't put the dots together. And like anybody looking from the outside be like, are you crazy? How did you not know? But because of just beliefs and the way we've been born, and I think just really the way we've been programmed as a young kid and growing up in this structure, you kind of you don't even put the 2 and 2 together. But over time, go ahead, please.
There's another reason that we don't put the 2 and 2 together. And that is that I interviewed Walter Ornstein, who was at one point the head of CDC's immunization program. And he told me that unless an adverse reaction happens within 48 hours of administration of this product, that the recipient won't connect it to the product. Okay.
That's
so
amazing.
If it happens on day 3, you won't think it's from that. And I thought that there was zero downside to them. So it never occurred to me for years. And then I started, my health was getting worse. I was going to the doctor. All these things are happening. And then many years later, I start making my movie and I'm listening to parents tell me what happened to their children. And then I listened to an adult woman who had an issue with her travel products. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly what happened to me. It's just that it started to really manifest a couple of weeks after the original round. And so I didn't connect the 2, but it got worse and worse and worse over a period of years. And she had the same thing happen to her. And so that really helped me to understand what was going on. And the proof of it is that once I started treating it homeopathically, it all started to change. Once I did homeopathic detox of those products, that's when I really saw my health start to improve. And that just confirms that that's exactly what the problem was.
Yeah. So amazing. And it's just funny. And then it took you time and listening to these, these moments, these pivotal moments in your life, hearing this executive just talk about profits. And it's like, those were the things that actually shook you out of it. And like, whoa, I got to do something different. And then, like you mentioned, the interviews. I know for me, one of the big moments was about 9 years ago, just the birth of my kid. And like you said, you mentioned having children, and he's 8.5. And I was put to the test of like, hey, what are you going to do? And I was like, as a, health, I've always been very health conscious, but I didn't know where I stood in that arena. It wasn't something I had to really think about until then. And I was like, I'm not too sure about these things. I need to do some more research. And the more research I did and the deeper I dug, I just wasn't confident in them, is what I'll say. I just wasn't so sure. And so actually I'm curious, I do have a question for you. We're definitely going to talk about the current, we'll can I even say the word, the
Products.
C word, the C word? I guess I could say it. I can say
The
COVID, right?
current products, just say.
Okay, the current products on the market. We'll definitely talk about them, but I'm curious, in your opinion, all your research, all your interviews, and everything that you've compiled over the years, do you think there is a safe juice out there for anybody or any person or any kid or any product that's worth getting?
I think the best way to answer that is to say that I believe in science. And the scientific method requires that we use placebos whenever we try to ascertain the risks of any kind of medical product or procedure. And the truth is that none of these products that are out there on the schedule have ever been tested against a placebo. So the adequate science, proper science, has never been conducted. And if that's the case, then we don't have anything that we can say with confidence, with even honesty about the true risks or benefits of these products. So I think that's really important to understand. Then on top of that, is it possible to make one of these products safe? I think that's highly questionable. And the reason for that is this. Some Japanese scientists, they took these products and they didn't use any of the ingredients. All they did was take the antigen, which is like the protein that's in these products, and inject it into, I think they injected it into mice or rats. I can't remember what the animal was, but they injected them into animals and then they observed them. And what they found was that just injecting those antigens or proteins into these critters one time, two times, a few times was enough to cause immune system dysregulation. So injecting that, puncturing the skin and injecting these things into the body was enough to overwhelm the normal stasis of the immune system and cause immune system dysregulation, meaning autoimmune disease and other problems. And I think that is incredibly important research that, of course, was never followed up on. And you have to ask yourself, why not? Because that's got to be some of the most important research that's ever been done. And there was no follow-up paper. And you can guess why.
Yeah.
There are certain powers that be that don't want that kind of thing reproduced or confirmed. And so that was it. But I mean, that's something that every human being should be aware of so that they can actually understand, is it the aluminum? I don't think so, because it was the antigen. Is it the polysorbate 80 or the PEG, the polyethylene glycol? Is it some other adventitious agent? Clearly, every single component has some issue with it. And it's not any of those, what we would call normally toxins. It's actually just the antigen itself. And I think that should give us all pause.
Yeah. Okay. So here's one of the great things. When people ask me the same question, I always go, hey, listen, look, I don't know. I don't care where you're on your journey or whatever, but I'm like, you just got to answer this question. I'm pro safety. If you can show me any safety trial, that like a legit safety trial, and what do I mean by legit? Like double blind randomized, the gold standard that you would just refer to in science. If you can show me for any one of those, for any of the past products, if you can show me one of those, I'll start taking all of them. But until I see that, I'm not going to do it. And I think people always look at me dumbfounded. And I think they might even be looking at both of us in this interview saying, what are you talking about? There's plenty of studies. And so there's plenty of studies. But what would you say to that when it's like, yeah, no, there are plenty of studies. They're just completely lacking and confusing to make you feel good that they were done well, but they were poorly done.
They're not really based on the scientific method. That's the truth. Okay. So there's a paper that we refer to in our movie, and it's our movie's called The Greater Good. You can see it at greatergoodmovie.org. And one of the papers that we refer to is called Placebos, What's in Them Nobody Knows. And the reason that nobody knows is because they're actually not regulated. And it is legal, perfectly acceptable to FDA for the pharmaceutical industry to use a solution containing aluminum, mercury, or another one of these products as the placebo. And none of the products that are on the market today are actually studied against placebo. I know that's crazy. Now, there were some placebo studies done 50 or 60 years ago, but none of the products that are on the schedule today, the children's schedule today, have been studied against a placebo. And they get around it because it's actually not specifically dictated or regulated by FDA. But that it gets worse, which is that, I've actually been discussing this with a scientist I know. If you look at the current products, well, half of Americans have some kind of chronic condition. But whenever they design these studies, these trials, they exclude people with health conditions and then they give it to the broad population. And over half of all school children today have some kind of chronic neurological condition or chronic condition, whether it's eczema or asthma or even obesity is a chronic condition. It's some are arguing that it's due to inflammation or damage to the pancreas, and that type 1 and type 2 are two sides of the same coin and that they're connected. Those things are connected to these products.
Yeah.
So, they're looking at healthy people, not the broader public. They're not using placebos. They are really rigging the research in order to engineer an outcome. And I know that's hard for all of us to believe. Listen, when I first learned about this whole issue, before my son was born, so I was really sick, having all these issues, ended up my doctor said, go see a homeopath. So I did. And the homeopath was just jaw-droppingly wonderful and made a huge impact on my life. And I just felt that it was the first time that somebody understood what was going on with me. And I started to feel a little bit better. And so much so that I enrolled in homeopathy college in secret.
That's amazing.
And, but the very first day in homeopathy college, the guy who was leading orientation said that we were going to learn about a bunch of things over the next few years. And one of them was vaccine. Sorry.
It's okay.
You can bleep it out. One of the things we were going to learn was about safety issues relating to these products. And I raised my hand and said, what are you talking about? The greatest invention of mankind. And he said, well,
Right.
That's one perspective, but we're going to talk about another. And then I went and read all about it. And I still really believe that these were the greatest things. And then I started going and researching and reading. And I thought, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, because I had believed exactly what everybody else does, which is that FDA is there to protect us. The government is good and there to protect us. And they would never allow these products on the market if they were not safe and efficacious. Right. And then I started to learn that 90% of the decline in infectious disease mortality happened before widespread use of these products and before widespread use of antibiotics. I mean, I can go into all this research, but basically I started learning that the version of history that I had learned was not accurate.
I'm raising my hand because I was exactly where, and I love what you said is, hey, it's difficult to swallow because we have that bias. We're like, but no, that's impossible. Why would anybody do this? And conspiracy theory, that's just ridiculous. I don't even want to say it's conspiracy, but I don't even think it's conspiracy. I think that better than anybody. I think it's about money, and they figured out you've seen the back doors of what it is. I think it's just about money. I don't think there's a conspiracy. And please jump in.
I know sometimes it messes with the video if you talk over you, so I don't want to do that. But I want to say what I forgot to say when I told the story about starting in school was that this guy, the guy who led orientation, the teacher, he came and gave me a book, and I read the book, and I went home and I cried after I read the book because it was so disturbing to me to actually realize that if I couldn't trust them with the health and well-being of little babies, our most vulnerable, then I couldn't trust them with anything. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty alarming and terrifying place for most people to be. And it's really sad. So I get it. I went through it. I literally sobbed for days because it just shattered my worldview that these people were trying to do good. But now, you connect the dots. There was mercury in eye drops and teething powder. We put fluoride in our water. How many of us voted for that or want that? There's GMOs and pesticides and all these things, right? Chemtrails, and which we call geoengineering. Look it up. It's a real thing. There's all these pesticides and chemicals. And then you've got all the GMOs, and you've got all of the fake, engineered and sanitized industrial vegetable oils and hormones in our food and, all this stuff.
Yep.
This is not stuff that we want. It's not health promoting. And if the government were doing its job, USDA, FDA, CDC, these products would not be being pushed on us. That's all there is to it. I know it's sad. I know it's scary, but that's the only thing I can conclude after researching this stuff for more than 20 years.
Yeah, love it. I couldn't agree more. One of the big things I like to highlight, Aaron Siri, who is an amazing lawyer, and he is, I'm trying to think of a good, nice way to say it. He's just doing an amazing job fighting for our freedom and really going after the truth, right, and exposing. And I remember he talks about this case he had with a doctor who he had a case with a woman, and they were forcing the Hep B product on the child. And so he had the maker, I believe, of the Hep B product on the stand. And when you get to see the court documents, you get to actually see what the study was that they were referring to show, hey, Hep B product safe and effective. It was ridiculous. Like, if anybody had seen the study, you would have just thrown your arms up and be like, that's not a legit study. I can't put this in my child. They give it to kids within like the first 24 hours of birth. And the study is based on, they tell you it's like based on, let's say 3,000 people, but 2,000 of the people they tested it on adults. And we're injecting this again in kids within 24 hours. So why would you test it on adults? That's another story. They did it on adults. And then let's say, actually, I think it was 100 kids or babies they actually tested on. 3,000 people, 2,900 were adults, 100 people were like actual babies. And they only monitored them for, like you said, 48 hours or 3 days. What kind of study is that? I mean, how do you have any long-term conclusion whether this is safe and effective? I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but there's another piece of that too, right? And that is why.
Right.
Newborn babies are not sharing IV needles with drug users, and they're not engaged in promiscuous sex. So why in the world would you give them that? There's zero need. But I'll tell you why. And we talk about this in our movie. There was a headline in the New York Times, and it said, Hep B, if adults won't take it, we'll just give it to babies.
Wow, that's so telling and hurting. It hurts me to hear that, but it's what we're dealing with right now. It's what we're dealing with right now. Why would you give a 5-year-old this product when they're the most immune right now of all? But it starts early, I think, right? It's kind of part of the subconscious brainwashing, really.
Well, I think that the agenda and the methods used by those behind the agenda to cultivate what is truly a cult of medicine in this country, it's a religion.
Yeah.
Go back more than a century and are very, very sophisticated and very broad spread.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what's really cool is that your background is all based on data and analyzing data and looking at data. And I just love it because you come in with a completely outsider perspective, but you have an understanding of data and you can really crunch it down, and you're using that and you're saying, wait, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't add up. So I think it's really helpful for people to hear and just hear your story and how you got here. So that's awesome.
The other thing about it is, I go and look at the primary research. I don't rely on what a newspaper says or a TV journalist or anybody else. As an analyst kind of geek by nature, and I actually was an analyst and I ran a research department and a portfolio management team, you have to read the actual research and crunch the numbers. So you go and you look at actually what's going on in the study, and then you try and figure out, well, what did they assume? What didn't they assume? I just read something yesterday. It's a study that was published in one of the Nature journals, and they deemed people to be fully given the product if they'd ever gotten sick from the supposed illness that we're facing. And they deemed people to have not gotten the product as long as it was less than 2 weeks after they got their first dose of the product.
Yeah.
I mean, that is literally a lie.
Yeah, and one of the big things, I don't know if, and you know this, but a lot of people don't, and I try to share it with people, but they unblinded people in the study. I'm like, because they felt sorry for them and they said, oh, well, man, it's just inhumane to not give them this product. But you just destroyed the entire control study of your, and they've been doing this throughout the history of time. If you go back and you look, yes, they've done studies, but when you don't have a legit control, you'll never compare it. And it's just ludicrous. And it's just so, most of us aren't getting that information. And so I'm even curious for you when you say, Joel, your audience, you included, you need to go out and read the studies. Where do people find these studies? Because I don't even know where to find it. I'm just lucky that I'm surrounded by people like you enough that I'm able to get some information. And that's where I go. And then there's some great books that I've read. But I mean, where do people start? Like, where do they even go to interpret these studies?
So, well, it depends on if we're talking about these products in general and the children's products, or these newer products that we're dealing with in the last year and a half. Because if you look, most articles that you see on a news site or on the internet, they will link to the actual study. So I would just encourage people to read the study, and don't only read the abstract, don't only read the conclusions or the executive summary, read the study, because very often they will say, everybody knows that these products are the greatest thing ever invented and have saved millions of lives. But then they will go down and they will actually talk about what's really going on and what their concerns are. So they will prevaricate at the top, but you have to read the whole thing in order to get to the meat of it. And very often their conclusions and the executive summary are contradicted by their own data. So you have to go and do that. Then if you're looking at these kind of things in general, there's an amazing book by Neil Z. Miller that is a compendium of 400 studies on the dangers of these products. So if you go on, I think it just says 400 studies or something like that. It's not every single, it doesn't have the entire study, but it has the abstract, and they are abstracts of those that are critical of these products. So that's a great place to start as well. But it's not easy. Listen, they don't make it easy for you.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, I've taught my son, he's 20 now, do not take anyone's word for it. Do your own research. Don't take my word for it. Question everybody, question everything, in particular, people in places of authority.
Man, yeah, well said. Let's talk about the Health Freedom Defense Fund. Kind of just talk about what you guys are up to and what you're doing. I'm on your email list. I subscribed as a member. I donated. So, but maybe people don't know about it. Can I just talk to them about all the exciting things that you guys are up to?
So when 2020 began to unfold, having done 20 years of research into this arena, I was pretty clear, unfortunately, very certain about what direction this was going to take. And I started saying to my husband in early January, oh man, this is going to be really, really ugly. They are going to use this. And he would say, no, honey, no, it's not going to be that bad. I'm like, it's finally here. They have been trying to use these products as a way to, well, first of all, force every adult to take these products, because most adults don't go and get these products. And so they've been trying to find a way to get everybody to take one. And think about it. If you create a drug is only applicable to a small segment of the population that is sick with a condition. These products are potentially applicable to all 8 billion people on the planet. And so, wow, what a market opportunity. And think about it. If you can get the government to mandate them and the government to protect you from any liability, man, talk about a business person's dream come true, right?
I gotta tell you something. I work with clients all the time on metabolic health, weight loss, gut health, and they'll ask me some questions about like type 2 diabetes, for example. And I'm like, listen, I've helped many people with this, reverse it. This is a lifestyle disease and we get them better, and I see it happen. And I say, think about it. When's the last time you've ever seen a Western doctor cure somebody from type 2 diabetes? Never. I'm like, matter of fact, it's the best business plan you could ever imagine. I'm like, I wish I created it. It's this amazing 30-year subscription plan. And I actually get to tell you at the beginning of it, hey, listen, I probably won't get you better. I'm actually not going to get you better, but you got to take this pill that I'm going to charge you with for the rest of your life. And it's not going to get you better. Matter of fact, you're actually going to get worse. And people say, sign up to it and say, okay. I just find that amazing. So I'm like, people say, Joel, you charge too much. I'm like, do I? I'm like, yeah, these other guys, they have the best business plan. I'm clearly not doing it right. So anyways.
Yeah, that and they don't get to the root of the problem, right?
Yeah.
And they don't actually help you to get better in any way. They're not healing whatever the issue is. They're just medicating it. But this is the cult of medicine, the cult that they can do no harm. And I mean, it's not an accident that they wear white lab coats. It's not an accident that they have doctor in front of their name. Who else gets to call themselves by some name in order to make it seem like they're somehow on a higher order with respect to prestigiousness in our society? Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody. This is not an accident, right? I mean, when I was actually maybe even before I was born, but there were all these images, my brand is Camel, and you'd have a doctor in a white lab coat with a stethoscope. Why? Because they're trying to make you believe that these people somehow have special sanctified knowledge that you don't. It's they're aware of things that you little people aren't aware of, and you need to bow down to them because they're authority figures and they are able to dispense penicillin and these other wonder medicines that are going to save humanity, and you should bow down to us and you should treat us differently and you should call us different and all these things. So let's come full circle because we've kind of gone off. But when 2020 started to unfold, I knew what was happening. And
by the way, Leslie, I want to ask you, did you know, I'm just curious. It took me about 2 weeks I was just kind of like maybe in the fog of it all. I was like, man, what is going on? They're just like pouring on the fear of mask and by the way, I was in San Francisco at the time, so it was really, we were like the mecca of fear. But to watch out for your Amazon packages and leave them outside. It took me about 2 weeks, and I kind of stood back, and I'm like, called up one of my buddies who's a very natural. I go, this is all BS. And I'm like, and he goes, you're 100% right. And from then on, I was just like, no, this is trash. And I actually caused a lot of friction with certain family members, unfortunately. But anyways, I'm just curious, was it for you? I mean, you have more knowledge in the game than I did. You were way more ahead of me. Were you already like, no, this is from Jump Street? Was it just pretty obvious to you?
The minute I heard that there was a virus out of China, I knew exactly what was happening. Unfortunately.
Got it. Very cool.
Yeah. I just, listen, they've put into place all the different pieces of the puzzle in order to facilitate the lockdowns, the tyranny, the contact tracing, the removal of our rights, all these things. It started with the Patriot Act in 2001, and it was followed by introduction of this legislation called the Model State Emergency Health Powers Act legislation, which conferred extraordinary authority on government, on governors and state health departments. And then you have the PrEP Act in 2005. And then you've got removal of habeas corpus in the National Defense Authorization Acts, which are appropriation bills essentially for the Pentagon every year. You have removal of the law that prohibited propagandizing of American citizens. So you can be detained, you can be propagandized, which means lied to by your government, and then they can push all this on you and no one's liable for any of it. So look at the last 20 years. Anyway, there's more to it. They've been trying to get universal medical products for these, for all adults. They've been pushing it for more than a decade, and there's been a slow, steady push to remove all parental rights with respect to these products for more than a decade as well. And so,
yeah.
I mean, I was very clear. And then when they started saying, oh, and it lives on money, I was like, okay, they're now going to collapse the financial system. That's the next piece of this. So they're basically,
it's all coming and it's all playing out. We're all seeing that.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So unfortunately, with my financial background and then my having made the movie, The Greater Good, and having done over 20 years of research on this, I knew what was happening, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Look, they tried it with swine flu in 2009, and they lied through their teeth about how many cases there were, through their teeth. And it's been well documented by Cheryl Atkinson. I've written about it on our blogs. And they have sensationalized, possibly created. I mean, it's, that's what some people argue.
Yeah.
Ebola, SARS-1, avian, bird flu, swine, MERS. I I was born in 1964. There were essentially no concerns about any of these kinds of things. And then all of a sudden, around the turn of the 21st century, it's like every 2 or 3 years, there's some new pathogenic, fear out there, right? And this is not normal.
Yeah.
And I think we can argue it's not natural. So coming back to Health Freedom Defense Fund, with all of this background and all this research I've done over the years, when 2020 unfolded, I was very confident that what was going to happen was going to be very unpleasant for all of us, in particular those of us who are aware of the dangers of these products, might not want to use these products, had already been injured by these products, and that they were going to be used as a pretext to alter society, perhaps permanently. And I decided that I wanted to do something about it. And so I started Health Freedom Defense Fund. And we have filed, I don't know how many lawsuits it is now. It's somewhere between 15 and 20 lawsuits, I think, since we first started.
Wow.
The most significant of which is that we defeated the federal government's travel mask mandate. So
yeah, you did.
You don't have to go on an airplane and wear a mask anymore because we won.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. And so I've had just, some, I think because of having made the movie and because of other successes I've had, people were willing to support me. And, I am super grateful to them. And all I can ask is any viewers who want to, please do support us, because we cannot do the work that we do without your donations. It is just not possible. Litigation is super expensive.
Yeah.
But we have some of the best legal minds in the nation on our team. And we have sued the Biden administration over the mask mandate, over their medical product mandate for federal contractors and subcontractors. That case has done very well. In fact, there's a similar case that was filed by the Georgia Attorney General and several other attorney generals that was just upheld in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, upheld on the merits, which are the same merits as ours. So we should win that case. And we've got another case on behalf of 6,000 federal employees who were mandated by the federal government to get these products. And that one is stayed as well, pending a decision in the Fifth Circuit. So that's going super well. We filed against Disney about a month ago because they are harassing, and we're going to terminate someone wrongfully because she happened to be a Christian conservative who didn't get this medical product, declined the medical product for religious and medical reasons. And we've got a huge lawsuit against the Los Angeles Unified School District, which we are working on. And, it's all these poor teachers and employees who cannot fund this themselves. They can't. And so we need your support. If you care about these people who are on the front lines, who have given their lives to educating your children and who stand for freedom and their own ability to dictate their own lives, please help us on these things. But anyway, so the whole point is that I started Health Freedom Defense Fund because I felt, well, first of all, some phenomenal trial attorneys had been brought into my life. And I thought that because of my unique background that I had a insight and perspective, and that I wanted to do something and get going before this whole thing this whole locomotive got rolling. And so that's what we did. And I'm just doing all I can to help as many Americans as I possibly can to fight back. We've got tons of resources on our website to help them understand what their rights are, resources to help them if they need to challenge a employer or to file a complaint against an employer. We are filing as many lawsuits, helping as many groups as we possibly can, because I'm, deeply troubled by what's going on and deeply opposed to other people dictating what we put into our bodies.
Yeah.
Full stop. That's it. Nobody gets to choose how I keep myself well, except for me. That's nobody else's right. It's not a business's right. It's not the government's right. And we all need to fight back. That's the bottom line. Because if we don't, it's not going to stop with this shot. It's going to stop with dozens, if not hundreds more. I don't know if you heard this, Joel, but the Moderna CEO just came out and said that they have a new product that will treat heart problems.
How convenient, huh? Create a problem and then solve
I wonder,
it.
the heart problems caused by their first product? I mean, this is crazy. My point is that Adults have been able to kind of rest in the comfort of this belief that, well, I'm out of school, I don't have to worry about this stuff anymore. Or maybe I have to worry about my kids, but now I'm of an age I don't have to worry. Yes, you do have to worry. They have hundreds of these products that they want government to mandate that you take. And these products alter your genes. We know this. They damage your immune systems. They damage your cognitive function. They are not healthy. They are not safe. And unless you want to be a perpetual medical customer for the rest of your life, at the order of the government, then we need to come together and stop this. So that's our mission: educate you about your rights and fight back as much as we possibly can, and advocate and help you to advocate on behalf of your rights.
Yeah, super critical. And I just want to say, everybody go out and donate to the Health Freedom Defense Fund. Leslie is not lying. Putting these, I know personally on a personal hand, putting these lawsuits together is not easy. It costs a lot of money. And I want to say, just to get some of these off the ground, it takes 50 to 150K just to get something off the ground, because some of the things I'm learning is what these lawyers do. And what we saw, first of all, I've been let go from my job of 15 years as a first responder, and it's taken a year for us to even get to where we're at and to get into court. And part of that is just because of the process we have to get through. But also, these lawyers do sneaky things of moving things out of different courts from federal to state. That happened with one of the American Frontline Doctors lawsuits. And then they also do these things, which I didn't know, called demurs. And so they basically tell the judge, like, there's not even enough evidence to look at this case. Just forget about it and let's just get it kicked out. And so they can keep fighting these demurs, but guess what? Every time that takes that costs the litigants a lot of money. And so you have to keep putting up money so that a judge can finally, the demur gets wiped out and a judge will finally look at the case. And so for the judge sometimes to even get to the point of discovery, which is actually receiving evidence. And I'm sure you're better at this than I am, but it seems like, at least from what I've seen so far, once discovery happens, that's when things start getting really interesting, because usually the other side doesn't want you to see what evidence they have because they don't really have any good evidence. So, but to get to that point, it could take $100,000 to $150,000 just to get there. So, help these people out. They need it, and they're doing a good job, and they're helping us out. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I mean, listen, I work for free, just so you know. My husband earns a decent living, and I have some money from having been on Wall Street, but I do what I do because I am passionate about freedom. I am passionate about this issue, and I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. I don't want anybody to have to live in a world or this dystopian future that these people envision for us. I don't want us to have an authoritarian government that is telling us how to live our lives. I don't want that. And so I don't take any money. I just do everything I can because I'm inspired by this work to help humanity. That's what I'm trying to do. And I share that because I hope people understand that this is I think it's a divine mission.
Yeah.
I think there is nothing more important than, we all Americans talk about the sacredness of freedom of speech. But I think the sacredness of bodily autonomy even trumps that. If we don't have the ability to determine what we put into our bodies and how we live our lives, how we keep ourselves well, we are literally nothing more than chattel. Seriously. Or cattle, like, some stockyard animal that they can do whatever they want to. And so we can't do this on our own. We need everybody to come together. And I mean, I don't care if it's $10 or 10,000, whatever you can give really helps us to make a difference, because we've got all these different lawsuits fighting back for you, for the people of America. And we want to hold these companies accountable. We want to hold the government accountable. We want to hold these states and local governments and school districts accountable. And so we're doing anything and everything that we possibly can to make that happen, because we believe in what our founding fathers set this country up for, right? I mean, I fully embrace the First Amendment. I fully believe, our Declaration of Independence says something that no other founding document on the planet says, and that is that our rights come from our Creator. Now, this is just a completely revolutionary idea, because hitherto, government gave rights to the people. Government did. And if government gives, government can take away. So what our founding fathers did when they wrote the Declaration of Independence was they said, no, 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 no. Our rights are inalienable. They are granted to us by virtue of us being born human. Think of how beautiful that is. It's just one of the most amazing notions. And it was truly revolutionary at the time. And I fully believe in it. I fully try and embody that if someone else wants to use these products, then they should have that right to do so. I hope they inform themselves. I hope they have good science that they can, look to. But I truly want nothing more than for each and every one of us to be free. And that's it. So that's why I do what I do.
Amazing stuff. I was just thinking as you were talking too, and people are so blind to it, but and I don't want to go too much into this, but Dr. Drew, who's like the famous doctor on the radio, it's really cool to even see a guy like him he's very humbled now. And they show some videos of him just talking back in early, whatever it was, 2021, saying, they're like, oh, you're going to get the product? You're going to get the juice? And he goes, oh yeah, I don't care. Give me the Moderna or whatever. He's like, it doesn't matter. They're both the same to me. Just give it to me. Well, guess what? He started having some reactions, and that led him to interviewing people like you and really like, what else is going on? And he's done a complete 180. And so that's what it's about. It's about the education. And even someone like him who grew up and fostered in that system as a doctor, even he's able to say, you know what, maybe there's something else here that I didn't see before. And, if he's saying that, then what else are we missing? And should we be mandating these things? No, I don't think anyone can mandate medicine. Let's be very clear about that. So, yeah.
Well, that, and also, listen, we learned from the Nuremberg Code that medical experiments require the prior voluntary informed consent of the subject. Okay? These products are still experimental. So are masks. They haven't done proper studies. Actually, there's good studies that have been done now, but they're all negative. They all show no efficacy and elevated danger, significant elevated danger. I'll be very clear.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I mean, I don't think any medical product should ever be mandated. And so you have the Nuremberg Code, and then you have the Helsinki Declaration on Human Rights, which took it a step further. And then you have the UNESCO Declaration, I believe it was in 2005 or 6, on bioethics and human rights. And the UNESCO Declaration went so far as to say that the practice of ethical medicine, just the practice of ethical medicine, not experiments, but ethical medicine requires prior voluntary informed consent. And there is a very strong, there are Supreme Court rulings, there is very abundant there's very abundant Supreme Court rulings and other case law that has supported the idea that we and we alone are able to decide what medicine we allow into our bodies, even if the medicine could save our lives. That we have that right because it's our body. That's it. So this is not something that should be negotiable or even discussed. And it drives me crazy that people will talk about, well, it doesn't prevent transmission or infection. It doesn't. And that's certainly an argument against mandating them. But the most basic thing is that no one should have the right to tell you what to do, what to put into your body. And so that's one of our bigger objections longer term of Health Freedom Defense Fund, is to try and codify that really, truly, clearly in law.
Yeah, love that. And I mean, the last thing I'll say is I tell this to everybody. Listen, if I truly believe that masks worked, and I'm like you, I'm like, just show me the science. Like, I mean, legit science. If masks worked and getting this product, we're really going to save my grandma, because my mom's old. She's not that old. Mom, sorry if you're listening to the podcast, but I'm saying, to be around older people, if I really truly believe that this would harm my mother, me being around harboring some infectious disease, I would absolutely get it. I'm not a heartless person, but the fact of the matter is it just doesn't cut the mustard. And yeah. we know that. So yeah.
Can I tell you, about the Dr. Drew situation? Have you seen the guy out of Britain named John Campbell, Dr. John Campbell?
That name doesn't sound
familiar. He was so...
Was he just on the high wire recently? Is that him?
I don't know. I didn't see it recently.
Okay. I think I might know who you're talking about. He's out of the UK.
he's got glasses and he's a bald head and he's an older guy. I think he's a retired general practitioner, but he's he's a physician. And he was starting out telling everybody how great they were. And he was just like Dr. Drew, I'm going to run out and get my shot. And I've gotten my first and my second and my third product. And, he was totally in support. And then he started doing some more research. He started seeing some more of the stuff that's coming out. He started seeing some of the comments, and there have been Pfizer document leaks and things like this. And the transformation is astounding. So he's another one to look at. You can watch his transformation over many months.
Yeah, amazing. I want to wrap things up. I know we both have to run. I do want to just ask you a couple more lightning round questions, but really quick. This podcast, I was just thinking, I'm a very optimistic guy. I always think the glass is half full, and I wanted to ask you, I know we got some tough times. I get that, but are we winning? What do you think? Are we what do you think?
So I think that we're in a longer war than people realize. And that the experience of the last 2.5 years is just the first kind of act of that longer term,
right?
What's that?
Kind of like it's a test in a sense.
I guess it's a test.
Or the Patriot Act. And then, you see, these are baby steps to leading to the reduction of freedom and stuff. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen like boom.
No. Yeah. But I think that that we won the first battle. And the reason I say that is if we had not won the first battle over mandating these products, we would all be, if we didn't take the product, we'd be in a quarantine camp already, is what I think.
Yeah.
And so the fact that 156 million Americans never got their second, third, or fourth dose of the product.
Yeah.
And roughly 75 million Americans never got a single one. That is an unmitigated disaster for the powers that be, who were trying to use the pretext of this dangerous disease and these medical to force these medical products onto us in order to get us into the digital control grid. That's the true objective, right?
Yeah.
It's not, as I've said from the beginning, this is not about public health and has never been about public health. It's about implementation of a digital control grid. And there's a reason for that. And that's because there are all these other parts of it. There are, we have over $31 trillion in debt here in the United States. In Europe, the governments can't really borrow anymore. They've destroyed their bond markets by having negative interest rates for over 8 years. The currencies are going down. They are extremely indebted. They've implemented these, many other policies. They've got a huge indebtedness with respect to entitlements. That's not the right word for it, but for like public pensions. And they've got huge problems, and they've painted themselves into a corner, and there's no way out. And so there's all of this information coming out about central bank backed digital currencies. Well, if you're going to introduce a digital currency, you want to have a digital platform. And if you want to have a medical product passport, you want a digital passport as well. And so the whole point is, and if you want people to accept these voluntarily and then be able to influence their behavior, you want some kind of a social credit system and some kind of shaming and humiliation of those who won't go along with the system, which is why we've heard, save granny. And if you don't save granny, then you're a granny killer, right? And if, you're inhumane and, all of these things. But the point is that there's all these different pieces of it. There's essentially what's called a sovereign debt default coming. So countries are going to default on their debt in the next probably year to 2 years. And they need to default on their debt, especially in Europe, because they're broke. And so what is going to happen is they're going to make this palatable. When they default on the debt, they're going to default on the pensions too. Remember, they have much more socialistic systems in Europe than we do in the US. And when they default on those pensions, what's going to happen? The average man in the street is going to be bloody livid.
Leslie, can I cut you off really quick? Because I was let go, I had 15 years of a pension, and people go for, and I called them up and I said, well, I'd like my money because I'm not going to wait till I'm 58 to collect. That's what you would do normally. I said, I'd like my money. And I didn't call them up. I sent my letter saying, yes, I want my money withdrawn. And I got a phone call, maybe a month passed, and this was really funny. I was shocked. The woman on the phone was like, do you know what you're giving up? Almost trying to like cajole me to like not go through with this. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I'm like, should you be doing this? And she's like, I'm like, no, tell me, what am I giving up? And she said, I kind of just played along, and she's like, well, you're giving like a lifetime of like money, like free money away. Like, do you know how much you could be collecting when you're 50 or 58? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, but I don't want to wait that long. And I almost felt like she was going to be devastated if I took my money out. And I just thought that was really interesting. And now hearing you say this.
Well, that's because California had about, I can't remember if it's 750 to $800 billion public pension deficit, unfunded public pension before 2019, before 2020. Okay.
So pension systems, you think, are just going to crash?
Almost $1 trillion in California alone.
Wow.
And across the country, I think it was about 5 trillion. Yeah. All these big states, they have serious unfunded public pension liabilities, and they were never going to be able to fix that. So that's a big part of it. In Europe, it's even worse.
Yeah.
And so saw that recently. My point is that, if you are going to default on pensions, you better have a backup. And what's the backup? Universal basic income, which is government handouts. So what a great way to kind of destigmatize taking money from the government than by getting COVID payments.
Wow.
Okay. Wow. So, you're basically, what they're trying to do is set up a situation so that they can default on government debt. They're going to default on the government debt, but in order for people to be comfortable with that, they have to say, well, we're going to give you something else, universal basic income, and we're going to let you default on your debt. So it's not just us, you get out of it. And then, how Klaus Schwab says, you'll own nothing and be happy. Well, in exchange for allowing you to wipe away all of your debt, you give them your assets.
That sounds fair.
Okay. And then what happens is, with the digital control grid, you've got a digital passport that's connected to your banking records, to your medical records, to your social media, to your voter and traveling ID, all of these things. You've got a central bank backed digital currency. So that's connected. You cannot transact without their say so. And you don't do what they want you to do, then they can cancel your money. And they're going to take it a step further. They've actually been investigating something called programmable money. Programmable money is money that they can actually program. So it's digital. It's got like a little software written into it that says, well, here's your $2,000 that you get each month. And at the end of the month, whatever's left over expires. Okay. Or you get $2,000 a month and you can use this much. You can use 5% on red meat. You can use 10% on fuel for your car. And if you exceed those, your money, it goes away. You actually can't. So it's limited. It's programmed in order to ensure a desired type of behavior, at least desired by them. So what I'm trying to paint this picture of is that this is all what we're experiencing, in my view, a cover story for what they're really going after, which is to try and save their own hides, because they know that they have been bleeding us dry through crappy policies and paying off their buddies and cronies. That's what they do. And then, but they can't kick the debt can down the street forever. And we've gotten to a place now, it really became crystallized in 2008-9 financial crisis, that they had to do something. And so I believe that all these steps have been put in place in order to get us to a point, and also the technology exists now where they can actually control social behavior through all of these mechanisms. And so they're trying to force this into a new system so that they can reset the old system and retain power after they do so. And you'll be in a situation where you've got a digital passport, which is connected to all of these things, which is connected to your employment. You can't travel, you can't socialize, attend a sporting event unless you do what they tell you to do. And you can't save money either.
Wow. So I guess we're not winning. No, I'm just kidding. No, I know what you mean.
Here's the thing. And here's the really positive thing, Joel. So that's cool. Really negative and really depressing. Okay. Yeah. We won the first battle. They have not been able to implement this system. If they had won, we would already be in the system. And they have failed. I think that is huge, 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 huge. So very that cool. Is super encouraging. On top of that, they have awoken tens of millions of people to the reality that the FDA is not protecting you. The government is not on your side.
Yeah.
The medical complex does not have your best interests at heart. And you need to be focused on taking care of yourself. And so I've been saying a lot for the last 6 months that globalism is the problem and that localism is the solution. So all these people are awake and they can now come together and they can start growing their own food. Somebody can buy, one person can raise cows for milk and someone else can raise chickens for eggs and they can swap, right? So we can do this. We can create our own true integrated health systems, not medical systems, integrated health systems on the local level. We can actually create our own schools that teach our children how to think, how to reason, how to challenge, how to dissect studies and really question things, right? We teach them the basics. We don't indoctrinate them. We can create communities based on what we really want to live in, not in some controlled and dictated dystopian reality.
Yeah.
We don't want that. And so there is this huge silver lining, and there are millions of us out there who want this and who are trying to focus our efforts on creating change. And so I'm super optimistic about all of that. And I just invite people to join us because, find a local community, find other people in your community who are into health freedom, who are into freedom, who are into local farming. Find a chiropractor, a naturopath, a homeopath in your community who can help take care of your healthcare needs. Get a coach like you. There's so many great things that are coming out of this. And you know what? I think more than half the population has woken up. And so that's a fantastically positive thing. But we're not over yet. They're not going to just take their ball and go home.
Yeah. Great way to end the message. Let's just do this. We'll wrap it up. I just want to ask you a couple lightning round questions. I won't do them all, but I just want to get your take on it, and then we'll wrap it up. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. I'm curious, this is I don't know what you're going to say, but what are some choices that you think you made, or a choice that you made that you think made you who you are today?
No one's ever asked me that, Joel. That's a very good question. Well, I would say, first of all, that my parents are principled people. And I think that they raised me to be a decent person. But I wandered pretty far away from what happened to me or how I was raised as an adult. I think, I went to college and I started to believe everything that I was being told in college and really I deviated very far from that. But I'll tell you that getting to a place where I had position, power, and money at 37 years of age was pivotal for me. So I think that the biggest thing was that I was doing all these things and I had all the trappings of success, but I was empty. I'll tell you, I got a huge bonus when I was 36 or 37 years old. And I came home and my husband said, did you find out your bonus today? And I said, yes. And I told him what it was. And then I started crying. And he said, why are you crying? Are you disappointed? He's like, that's unbelievable. And I said, no, I'm empty. And I think I was empty because I'd had the unbelievable luxury of having multiple experiences. On the one hand, I had all of this great fortune and great success. On the other hand, I had heard CEOs tell me that they knew that they were going to kill people, but they'd still make billions of dollars. That is not an experience that most people get to have. And I literally felt like someone kicked me in the stomach when I heard those things. And I think it just spurred me to really reflect on who I was and what I wanted to do and whether or not I was playing for the right team. So I think that was a really pivotal experience for me. And then the next thing was becoming a mother.
Yeah.
Because becoming a mother made me view my entire life through a different lens. I fully believe that we model the people that we want our children to become. We don't just tell them what to do and then do whatever we want. We model it. So I seriously changed my life in order to model the behavior that I wanted my son to see and to emulate as he grew up. And I try to live an incredibly honest life of integrity where I do what I say I'm going to do. I live the life that I say I want, that I want to believe in, and then I embrace it. And I try to be the most honest, decent person I possibly can. And so I think those were probably the two most critical experiences in my life that made me that way.
Huge. Love those. I'm a big reader, as you can see behind. And, especially during the pandemic, one of the books that really helped me give me some clarity was Virus Mania, which I'm sure you've read, and so a whole bunch of other ones. And you've mentioned some books. I'm curious, were there a top 1 to 3 books that just jump out at you that had a huge impact on your life or shaped you, and that you'd say, hey, someone else should go out and read these?
Okay, so one of the most amazing books I've ever read is a book called Emotional Healing Through Homeopathy, or with Homeopathy. And it's just a little book, and I cannot remember who wrote it now. It was written by a British homeopath, but it is a truly life-changing book. Helps you to understand so much of how we are physically, mentally, and we are physically what we are mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Okay. And then on top of that, who we are spiritually, mentally, and emotionally is oftentimes dictated by the wounds and traumas and experiences that we've had in our life. And so it really helps. Emotional Healing with Homeopathy. Phenomenal book. The next book I read that really changed my life was Neil Z. Miller's Vaccines. Sorry.
So good.
Bleep it out.
I think we're okay.
Are they really safe and effective?
Yeah.
And that book was the book that the guy who led the opening of my homeopathy orientation told me to read. And that was life-changing for me because it was the first book. But if you really want to understand what's going on, read Dr. Suzanne Humphrey's Dissolving Illusions, because that is just a phenomenal book. And then there's something else called, it's a book that was written by, oh my gosh, Harris Coulter. Well, there's also Barbara Loe Fisher and Harris Coulter's, how can I not remember it? Oh my goodness. It's the dark, I can't remember it. It's Barbara Fisher's book, and she was the star of my movie.
I'll put it in the show notes. I'll look it up.
It's all about the DPT products. It's an amazing book, but Harris Coulter also wrote a book called Immu Products and Social Violence.
Interesting.
That is a jaw-dropping read.
Okay, wow, these are all great. You named 3 books that I've never heard of. Dissolving Illusions was a big one for me, as well as Virus Mania. But
Virus Mania is phenomenal. But I mean, I'm a homeopath, and so during homeopathy school, I learned about all of the fallacies of germ theory, and so I didn't actually. I mean, Virus Mania is great, and so is Viral Delusion. Have you seen the movie? It's a multi-part series, documentary. It's got lots of great information in it. That stuff didn't shock me as much because I'd already kind of gotten over the whole germ theory idea 20 years ago. But this is the other thing.
The Constitution. Hey, go figure, huh? Isn't that an amazing? I find it amazing that they were so prescient and they had so much forethought of how they were creating this country back in the day. Because
listen, if we did not have our founding fathers and the genius that they possessed, we would be Canada or Australia right now. We would.
Or China. Yeah, 100%.
Well, or China. I mean, hopefully not quite that bad yet. But the point is, we have been protected because they had such unbelievable foresight and wisdom to understand that our rights are inalienable. They don't come from government, that we must be free to exercise freedom of speech because you can't think without speaking, freedom of religion, the freedom to petition the government when you have a grievance. That's actually law. The freedom to assemble. And, all of these rights have been trampled in the last couple of years, but there are people who are now educating themselves about these rights and actually standing up. So I think that's something else I really urge every person to read. Yeah.
Yeah. Great call. Last but not least, where can people find you and just the good work that you guys are doing over at the Health Freedom Defense Fund?
Yeah. So healthfreedomdefense.org is where you can go and see presentations I've made. If you want to hear more about detail about this digital control grid I'm talking about, there, you click on Learn and then Presentations, and you can watch my presentations where I talk about some of this. I've given other presentations about the medical complex, which is very important as well. So go to our website, healthfreedomdefense.org. You can see presentations. You can see different interviews I've done. On top of that, we've got a resources page where you can find tools to help inform you about what your rights are and how to take action in order to defend them, how to file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission if your employer is violating your rights, all sorts of things like this. So, go to our website. It's got a wealth of information and resources for you. And that's where you can find us. You can donate there. You can become a member for $10. It's just a one-time fee of $10. And you can also find all of our lawsuits under our legal corner. And you will see that we have done a ton. We still have many, many more that are in progress. And then we've also got, I don't know, probably 4 that we are in the process of, we're building up to filing in the next weeks to months.
Awesome stuff.
So thank you for having me so much, Joel. And also thank you to all your viewers for their support. We are so grateful for every single penny that is given to us. And we couldn't be doing this without your support.
Yeah, amazing. Leslie, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate you.